One of the biggest contentions made by this channel is that a team's record isn't everything. Certainly it can tell us something about a team, and it's the only thing that matters when it comes to qualifying for the NFL playoffs and for draft position. But by itself, it doesn't always tell us a team's true quality. During the Super Bowl era, 545 teams have put up a double-digit win total, but 16 of those teams still qualify as below average. These are the NFL's paper tigers, and we're going to be counting them down for you today. And we will be doing that in the same manner we always do, by using C-Score. C-Score is a metric created by this channel to provide a full and thorough examination of every single NFL team during the Super Bowl era, taking into account many factors rather than just looking at its record. For a deeper explanation of how C-Score works, be sure to check out the description of this video. We're only concerned about a team's regular season win total, so if they happen to go something like 9-7 then win a playoff game, they will not be counted today. We've covered most of these teams at some point in the past, but we've never grouped them quite like this before. Thank you for joining us today. We're ready to get this thing started. The 2005 Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the best of the worst, taking the number 16 spot. They rate out as one of the most average teams of the entire Super Bowl era, but you'd never know it just looking at that 11-5 record. They compiled it against the league's second easiest schedule, which they only outscored by 26 points. Despite those 11 wins, their C-score dips ever so slightly under zero at negative 0.009. This was the Bucs' first trip back to the playoffs after their Super Bowl triumph in 2002. In fact, they were coming off back-to-back losing seasons, so winning the NFC South had to feel pretty good. They did so by winning 5 games by 4 points or fewer, and once they got to the playoffs, they were one and done at home against the Redskins. Their drop to 4-12 the following season didn't come off as too surprising. So far, it's Tampa Bay 2, the rest of the league nothing. The 2010 Buccaneers occupy the number 15 spot. Their profile is nearly identical to the one from 2005. Same rank in points scored, one rank better in scoring defense, a plus 23 point differential versus a plus 26. They had one fewer win at 10-6 against the slightly harder but still undaunting schedule. C-Score rates them as only slightly worse this year at negative 0.032. There were 2 other major changes from 2005 though. One is that they didn't win the NFC South, actually finishing 3rd behind the burgeoning Atlanta Falcons and the defending Super Bowl champion New Orleans Saints. That left them in a battle for the final wildcard spot with the Giants and the Packers. The Packers won the tiebreaker on strength of victory, which of course was all for the best, as they went on to win the Super Bowl. We're back in 2010, but we're switching conferences to the AFC. At number 14 are the Kansas City Chiefs. Having gone 4-12 the season before, they were certainly thrilled with their 10-6 record and AFC West title this season. But it wasn't done without some smoke and mirrors. Their plus 40 point differential wasn't too bad, but that strength of schedule was near the bottom of the league. They're just underwater in C-score at negative 0.1. They may have only had the 5th easiest schedule in 2010, but they would have ranked as the easiest schedule in 37 out of the other 58 seasons of the Super Bowl era. They also won their division with a losing record within the division, thanks in large part to the special teams train wreck that was the San Diego Chargers. These gifts didn't help KC in the playoffs though, where they hosted the Baltimore Ravens and got pasted 30-7. Next up at number 13 are the 1978 Houston Oilers. After playing some of the worst football known to mankind at the beginning of the decade, Houston was starting to make good. This season they were 10-6, but they were still outscored by 15 points. The AFC Central was a tough place to play though, so they didn't have the easiest schedule. All told, they put together a C-score of -0.376. Over the 59 years of the Super Bowl era, there have been 96 different teams, fewer than 2 per season on average, that went an entire season without a single victory by multiple possessions. Of those 96 teams, none had more wins than these Oilers. That was just in the regular season though. They secured 2 such victories in the playoffs before the Pittsburgh Steelers came knocking, and the Oilers' dream run was over. At number 12, we have the 1995 Buffalo Bills. They were never quite as good as their results would indicate, but it never dipped into this territory. They went 10-6 this year with a positive point differential, but just barely. Trailing only their division rival Indianapolis Colts for the league's easiest schedule, this performance wasn't enough to consider them as above average, registering a C-score of -0.702. They started the decade with 4 consecutive trips to the Super Bowl before hitting the skids somewhat in 1994, so a bounce back to 10-6 was a welcome sight. They were able to navigate a tricky AFC East and came out on top. Getting to host the warm weather Dolphins in frigid Buffalo was helpful in the wildcard round, but a trip to Pittsburgh the following week proved much less fruitful. 2004 was a terrible year for the NFC, and the biggest beneficiaries of that come in at number 11, the Atlanta Falcons. Their +3 point differential was smaller than the 6 games they went over 500. Despite getting to play one of the easiest schedules in the league, they still needed 6 wins by 4 points or fewer while only taking 1 such loss. They only managed a C-score of -0.737. They sure could run the ball though, finishing with 2,672 yards, leading the league and nearly 300 yards more than second best. With the benefit of that weak conference, they were able to grab a first-round bye and play a pretty horrid Rams team at home. They dispatched them with ease, but when faced with playing the Eagles in Philadelphia, they came back to earth pretty quickly. Atlanta wouldn't be back in the playoffs for 4 more years. The NFL's version of A Tale of Two Cities takes the number 10 spot, the 1989 Green Bay Packers. After a lot of lean years, they finished 10-6, outscoring the 3rd easiest schedule in the league by only 6 points. It was still the best record the Packers had put up since 1972, a period of time that only included 1 playoff appearance in a strike-shortened season. Their C-score checks in at -0.99. Now for the dichotomy with this team. Never mind their 7 victories by 1 possession. 4 of those were by 1 point, giving them the admittedly awesome nickname of the Cardiac Pack. However, while a 10-6 record was good enough to win 2 different divisions in the AFC, it was not good enough for even a wildcard spot in the NFC. So like they said on The Facts of Life, you take the good and you take the bad. Speaking of going long stretches without much success, our number 9 entry belongs to the 2007 Cleveland Browns. They too went 10-6 for their first winning record since 1994, which was an entirely different incarnation of the franchise. They also had a weaker point differential and strength of schedule. It took until entry number 9 to break the -1 point barrier, and leave it to the Browns to do so, with their C-score sitting at -1.099. It's funny, I never realized how many parallels existed between the '89 Packers and this Browns team until right now. Right up to Cleveland missing the playoffs with that 10-6 record that would have been good enough in the other conference. No 1-point victories for this crew, but they did grab 6 of their victories by a single possession. They were a fun watch, it's just that tiebreakers were not their friend, losing out on 2 of them. For generally being a very unlucky franchise, it's a little surprising to see a Chargers team on this list. These are the 2022 Los Angeles Chargers at number 8. Usually faced with a tough schedule, they had an easier time of things this year, but were only able to outscore it by 7 points while putting together a 10-7 record. Another fun team to watch, but not such a stellar C-score at -1.236. Yeah, they got their 10 wins in a 17-game schedule, but them's the breaks. Of course, this Chargers team will be remembered for one thing and one thing only: taking a 27-0 first half lead against the Jacksonville Jaguars in the playoffs before blowing it and losing 31-30. We talk about Chargering quite a bit on this channel, but this looked like they were channeling the Falcons. That mixes about as well as fire and gasoline. Poor Cleveland. Even when they win, there's a virtual asterisk next to it. The 2020 Browns team takes our number 7 spot. They outdid their record from 2007, but their point differential dropped into the negatives and their schedule was quite easy, 3rd easiest in the league. They made it back to the playoffs for the first time since 2002, so they won't care about this. But the fact is their C-score wasn't great at -2.258. On top of this being their first playoff appearance in 18 seasons, they notched their first playoff victory in 26 seasons, and they did it in style, beating the Steelers in Pittsburgh, taking out a big chunk from their eternal rivals. So we can sit here, dissect this team, and be 100% right about them. But sometimes seminal moments trump every last little bit of math in the world. This would be one of those times. And now for our number 6 entry, the 1995 Philadelphia Eagles, our second entry from this season. Coming off a couple of disappointing seasons, the Eagles started anew with head coach Ray Rhodes, and while the on-field product didn't really improve, their record sure did. They were 10-6, but every other number listed here ranked in the bottom half of the league, except for that scoring defense that barely scraped by. Their C-score is -2.584. With the NFC not nearly as powerful as it had been in recent years, that 10-6 record was good enough to get Philly into the playoffs, and as the 4 seed they got to play host, but against the red-hot Detroit Lions. They were correctly favored to lose the game, but instead they blew the doors off of them, taking a scarcely believable 51-7 lead on the way to a crazy final score of 58-37. Things weren't so rosy the next week in Dallas, but it was a hell of a run. We will open the top 5 with the 1985 Washington Redskins. They made 3 Super Bowls in a 6-year period that encompassed this season, so it could be forgiven to think that they were still pretty darn good sitting here at 10-6. But the offense was mostly a no-show while getting outscored by 15 points against the bottom 10 schedule. C-score wasn't a huge fan of this team, sticking them with a -3.225. A big part of the reason for Washington's good fortune this season was a 6-1 record. Scores are taking bigger drops. At number 4 are the 1979 that went 10-6 with a decent but unspectacular +36 point differential. They topped the league in points allowed, while the offense was nowhere near up to snuff. Considering they also played a historically easy schedule, it's no surprise they were underwater in C-score at -3.999. But that's not the whole story for this team. Just 3 years earlier, the franchise was born, doing so with an 0-14 record. Then they started the next season at 0-12 with a simply horrific offense. They started to come to life in 1978, especially on defense, and with the offense no longer at a Pop Warner level, they were able to make some noise. They won a playoff game and were on the doorstep of the Super Bowl, so all in all, not too shabby. We've been running into this franchise quite a bit lately. At number 4 are the 2016 Miami Dolphins. Yet another 10-6 team with a negative point differential. Miami was underwater in every single category here except for their record, which was tremendously aided by an 8-2 mark in one-score games. Their first winning record since 2008 comes with the added hindrance of a negative 4.071 C-score. This team was coached by Adam Gase. Need we say more? Okay, we'll say a little more. Miami definitely hit big at the top of their draft, Laramie Tunsil in the first round and Xavier Howard in the second. They won 9 out of 10 games at one point, 7 by one possession, but the only team they beat that was really any good were the Pittsburgh Steelers. They would play Pittsburgh again in the playoffs, and the Steelers rolled them 30-12. Our second place team, and our second team to fall victim to the 17-game schedule, here we have the 2021 Las Vegas Raiders. That point differential of negative 65 cannot be ignored. It's downright ugly, in fact. They are a more rare case as a team who played a difficult schedule, but some kind of performance other than a 4-0 record in overtime and 3 other wins by 4 points or fewer was needed. Their C-score drops to negative 6.517. As Vegas won a bunch of games they had no business winning, the headlines were coming off the field, involving the firing of head coach John Gruden and the release of former first-round picks Henry Ruggs and Damon Arnett. They made it to the playoffs though, and they gave the Bengals a game, even as Cincy scored a controversial touchdown near the end of the first half. But the clock had long passed midnight on this Cinderella story. It's only a surprise when this team shows up on a list and isn't number 1. The most anticlimactic reveal in all of sports media is when the 2012 Indianapolis Colts ranked number 1 in a CCC Productions video about something bad. Here they are in all their glory. 11-5, negative point differential, bottom half of the league in points scored and points allowed, easiest schedule in the league, a negative 8.176 C-score. A win is a win, right? That would be the hallmark of this Scooby-Doo ghost, who would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for those damn kids. But they did get away with it to a certain extent, making the playoffs and being a rare team on this list that didn't regress the following season. They got smacked by the Ravens in the wildcard round as expected, but kudos I guess for making it that far. Better to be lucky than good sometimes. Let's now take a look at all these teams at once. The first half of the countdown sees a bunch of these C-scores tight together, with only the number 9 ranked 2007 Cleveland Browns dropping below negative 1. Cleveland makes a second appearance in the second half of the list, while the Buccaneers make a third. How unfortunate for two franchises who so rarely make it to double-digit wins. These 16 teams had a combined record of 164 and 94, a .636 win percentage. The next season, they combined for a 117, 141, and 1 record, a .454 win percentage. 2 teams improved, 3 stayed the same, and 11 saw a drop. That makes for a good track record on this analysis, if I do say so myself. Thank you so much for making it to this point in the video. Hadn't done a traditional C-score countdown in a while. Be sure to like and share the video, hit that subscribe button, and ding the notification bell so that you don't miss out on the channel's many offerings. Let me know what you think about all of this. Was I a little too hard on some of these teams? Given the adversity a lot of them had to overcome, I would call that a fair assessment. Was there another double-digit win team you were expecting to see? Do you think any team can pull this trick for the upcoming 2025 season? Share your thoughts on these topics or anything else you might have on your mind down in the comments section below. I wish to thank you once again for joining us today, and until next time,